Hi there. In this video, we will be creating a laser cut name tag design using CorelDRAW. The first thing I'll do is verify that the settings in CorelDRAW will allow us to use this design with our laser cutter. So the workspace is currently set to broadsheet, which is 24 inches wide by 18 inches tall. This is in the landscape orientation. This allows our CorelDRAW workspace to match up with the dimensions of our laser cutter bed. Next, I'll click on the rectangle tool to verify that the outline width is set to hairline. And then down near the bottom right, we can see that the fill is currently set to none and the outline color is red. We're using RGB, not CMYK. If your color settings are set to CMYK, the laser cutter will not be able to laser cut your design. Next, we'll create the basic shape for the name tag. I'm going to use the rectangle tool to draw a small rectangle. I'm going to then click on this lock icon so it is unlocked. This allows me to adjust the width and height independently from each other. So we're going to use a width of 3 inches and a height of 1.75 inches. If you'd like, you can modify the rectangle to have rounded, scalloped, or chamfered corners. If I go up here and type in 0.25 inches, all 4 corners are now rounded. With this lock icon locked, any change made to one corner will happen to all 4 simultaneously. So these are rounded corners, scalloped, and chamfered. I like the rounded corners for this, but I'm going to change the radius to 0.15 inches. That looks good to me. I'll then use the ellipse tool to create the circular hole for the keychain itself. If you hold down the control key, you can force your ellipse to be a perfect circle, which is what we want. I'm then going to lock this ratio. So when I change the width to 0.25 inches, the height changes with it as well, keeping it a perfect circle. The last step is to move these 2 objects so that they are aligned with each other. And there's a couple different ways you can do this. I like to use a 2-point line as a sort of ruler. To do this, I would check that the Snap to Objects is enabled or checked. And then I'm going to look for the midpoint of the left side of the rectangle. And then holding down Control again, that allows me to draw a horizontal line. I'll just draw a horizontal line from there. Let me zoom in a bit. I'm going to grab the center of the circle and drag it to the line. I'm not as concerned with the horizontal position of the circle, but in the Y dimension, I want it to be sort of symmetrical. So that looks good, but I'll go ahead and show you the other way to align objects that I often use, and that's to use the coordinates. So with the rectangle selected near the top left, I can see the current X and Y coordinates of the center of the rectangle. I want to change to the left side, that midpoint, and change the position to be 0.5 inches, and we'll do just -1 inch, just so we have some nice numbers to work with. If I select the circle, I can make its vertical position also be -1, so now they're aligned. And let's say I wanted it to be 0.2 inches of space between the outside and this inner side of the circle. If you remember, the rectangle had a position of 0.5, so if I do 0.7, there's now 0.2 inches of space between them. I can draw a 2-point line and verify that spacing at 0.2 inches. So Control Z to undo, and we're ready to move on. Let's go ahead and add some text to our name tag. I'm going to click the text tool, and you can either draw out a text box or just left click and start typing. So now that I have the text, we can adjust the position, we can change the font. I'll go ahead and select Bauhaus 93. For the font size, if I change it to the next highest size in the drop-down menu, it's too big. But you're not limited to these values. You can use any numerical value. So 28 seems pretty good to me. For this position, you could center it on the name tag if you'd like. So if you remember, the rectangle is centered at now 2 inches in the X dimension. If I wanted this to be aligned with that, I could change the position to also be at 2. But I think I want to do something different. We made there be 0.2 inches of space between the edge and the circle. I'm going to do the same thing with my text. So if I check the top right corner, the rectangle has coordinates of 3.5 inches in the x-axis and negative 0.125 inches in the y-axis. I can then have my text be 0.2 inches inside of that. So for me, that means 3.3 inches in the x-axis, and y was negative 0.125, so negative 0.325. And there we go. Now let's go ahead and look for an image we can use to add to our name tag. I did a Google search for the Golden Gate Bridge, and you can see that it pulled up a lot of different photos. These look nice, but they're not going to work well with the laser cutter. One thing you can do to refine your search is go to Tools. Under Color, we can change to black and white. Now, some of these would work a lot better, but under Type, I'm going to change to Clip Art. And this is going to give me some options that I think will work really well with the laser cutter. Looking at these images, I'm going to go ahead and pick this one. It looks fairly straightforward, but you can still tell exactly what it is. I'm just going to go ahead and right-click on this image and copy image, and then we'll go back to CorelDRAW and paste it there. We can now right-click and paste our copied image, and then go up to Trace Bitmap, Outline Trace, and Clip Art. This brings up a new pop-up window, and there's a few things that I'm going to adjust or play around with to try to improve the conversion of our image to an SVG file. First, I'm going to remove the color from the entire image. This will get rid of all of the white from the background. I'm going to try adjusting the level of detail a little bit. Doesn't appear to change very much. What about smoothing? Yeah, let's go with about that value there. The last thing I'm going to check is the colors. This was a black and white image, but it's actually identifying a gray in there as well. I'm going to reduce the number of colors to 2, so it's just black and white. And then I'll go ahead and click OK. This new SVG file, I can then move and adjust. I'm going to zoom in on my name tag. Continue bringing this down to size. That looks pretty good. One thing I've noticed is that this image is not actually filled with black. If we look in the bottom right corner, the outline is set to none, which is good, but the fill is not 0, 0, 0. It's 34, 30, 31. So I'm just going to left click on this black color, so now it is indeed black. The last thing I'm going to do is modify its position a little bit. I want this to be centered with my name. So with the centered dot, or any of these middle dots would work. That X position is 2.144 inches. So I'm going to change the image to be the same 2.144 inches. So they're now centered with each other. And the last thing I'm going to do is move the image so it's 0.2 inches above the bottom edge. If I go and change which sort of square is highlighted, I can see that the bottom edge has a y-axis position of negative 1.875 inches. So for the image, I want it to be negative 1.675 inches. And there we go. That looks good to me. The very last step is to save this as a PDF file, but there's currently an issue, and that's that the laser cutter will not engrave our name. It does not understand Bauhaus font or 28-point font size. So there's two ways you can get the laser cutter to correctly interpret this. First is to select the text, go to Object and Convert to Curves. These are now curves instead of text, and the laser cutter would be able to understand that. I'm going to Control Z to undo, show you the second option. When you're saving your file, change to save as type, so PDF. And when you click Save, you'll get this little pop-up window. If you go to Objects, make sure this Export All Text as Curves option is selected. It may not be selected by default. Then click OK, and your PDF file will be laser cut correctly.